Hi, let's learn Disney Robin Hood, Sheriff of Nottingham game. A 3 to 5 player game by Sergio Halaban and Andre Zatz, Spin Master Games, and Simon. King Richard is away at war. His brother, the evil Prince John, has taken over in his absence. With his henchman, the Sheriff of Nottingham, he's relishing in the king's treasures and taxing the poor villagers half to death. Robin Hood and his merry band of do-gooders step in to protect the poor and save their country. With your help, together they'll steal back the royal treasure and smuggle goods to those in need. The goal of the game is to be the player with the most amount of points after endgame scoring. To set up, each player takes a player board and merchant bag of the same color. Choose one player to be the banker. That player hands out each player 50 gold, being sure to keep their personal supply separate from the bank funds. If playing a 3-player game, remove the Otto the Blacksmith card as well as his tokens. Also, remove the cards that say 4+. They are not used in a 3-player game. Otherwise, collect all the cards together and shuffle them. Deal out 6 cards to each player, and the remaining cards will form a draw pile. If you ever run out of cards from the draw pile, take the discard pile and shuffle that together to then form a new draw pile. The player who has the most actual money on them will be the first sheriff. Give that player the sheriff standee. The game is played over a series of rounds. During each round, players will take turns being the Sheriff of Nottingham, while the other players play as their selected character. Each round is divided into 5 phases which must be played in this order. First, rob the rich. Second, load bags. Third, declaration. Fourth, inspection. And fifth, end of round. In a 3-player game, everyone will have been the sheriff 3 times. Otherwise, everyone will have been the sheriff twice. During the first phase of a round, players will discard unwanted cards, hoping to gain better cards. The sheriff chooses who will start this phase, and then it will go clockwise from there. Players may exchange up to 5 cards. Discard those cards in the discard pile, and the sheriff may inspect if he chooses, and draw back up to 6 cards. The sheriff himself, however, does not play during this phase and cannot exchange their good cards. And let's go over our cards right now. On each card is the point value. This is the amount of points it is worth if you have it by your player board at the end of the game. Under the value is the penalty. This is the amount of gold you are required to pay during the inspection phase if you are caught. Cards with green borders are legal goods. Cards with red borders are stolen treasures and may not be declared. We have 4 types of legal goods: carrots, cheese, fabric, and wood, as well as stolen treasure cards: jewels, rings, crowns, and money bags. Phase 2 is the load bags phase. All non-sheriff players will simultaneously place goods in their bags. You may place 1 to 5 goods in your bag, but keep it secret from other players. Once your bag is closed, you cannot change your mind about what to place in the bag. Phase 3 is the declaration phase. In this phase, players will declare to the sheriff what goods they are taking into the village, but it's not necessarily clear if the player is being truthful. Starting with the player to the sheriff's left and proceeding clockwise while keeping the bag closed, each player will look the sheriff in the eye, declare which goods they are taking into the village while still being honest about the number of cards that are in the bag, and then hand the sheriff their closed bag. The rules of declaration are as follows. As already stated, you must declare the exact number of goods in your bag. You can only announce one type of legal good, and you cannot declare a stolen treasure. So in this case, you would have to look at the sheriff and say, my bag has 5 fabric in it. You would have to say 5 because there are 5 cards. The jewels are a stolen treasure, so you'd have to lie about that anyway, and wood cannot be declared because fabric was already declared. Phase 4 is the inspection phase. Now it's the sheriff's turn. As sheriff, it's up to you to decide which bags to inspect. If you catch someone in a lie, you collect additional taxes. However, if someone was honest, they will collect from you. As sheriff, you may choose to threaten someone with inspection. As a player, you can offer extra taxes to the sheriff to distract him from what's in your bag, or even try to convince him to inspect someone else's bag. Remember, all players are going through inspection simultaneously. And here are some examples of what can be offered as taxes to the sheriff to get your bag through. You of course can offer coins, legal goods you've taken to the village, but have not yet turned into villager tokens, which we will get to in a bit, stolen treasure from Prince John that you can return, even goods that are inside your bag, or so you say, or even promise of future favors. However, cards from your hand or more coins than you actually have cannot be offered. Normally all taxes and deals made during the inspection phase must be honored, but there are some exceptions. If, for example, you said you would return a crown from your bag, but you actually don't have a crown, you would still have to prove that you don't have it if the sheriff insists. And the same rule applies with your stolen treasure. The sheriff is able to take the taxes and let you through, or ignore the taxes and inspect the bag anyway, or let you through without even paying any taxes. And as these negotiations are happening simultaneously, all players can participate in all negotiations at the same time during this phase, but the sheriff decides when the negotiations are over. If the sheriff does decide to inspect the bag, regardless of what was offered, he will open the bag and reveal its contents to all players. And once the sheriff hands back a bag or opens it, the negotiations are over for that bag. And if the taxes are taken, the bag cannot be inspected. Remember, when offering a bribe to the sheriff, keep in mind you will have to give him a penalty for any confiscated goods. So sometimes it's worth it to offer a little bit more to ensure you are able to pass. An example of a negotiation could be something like, the Sheriff of Nottingham is about to inspect your bag. Little John says, "Hey, you don't need to inspect my bag. How about some carrots for your troubles?" The sheriff says, "Add 8 coins to that and I'll let you go." So you give the sheriff 8 coins and he lets you go. An example of bribing the sheriff with promises would be something like, "If you don't inspect my bag, I won't inspect yours next round." Whether the player keeps that promise or not is up to that player. Usually it's obvious when a deal has been accepted, but if there is ever any confusion, just use the word deal to show that you agree with the terms. When you are playing as the sheriff and you take a bribe, those goods get added to your player area. There are 2 possible outcomes if the sheriff does inspect your bag. Number 1, you are being untruthful. If your bag gets inspected and what's in the bag was not exactly what was declared, the goods that were truthfully declared still go into the village to your player board. Any goods you did not truthfully declare are confiscated, whether legal or not. The player must then pay a fine to the sheriff equal to the penalty shown on each card. So this player would have to give the sheriff 6 gold. The sheriff takes those and places them in the discard pile. If you run out of gold, you can use legal goods or stolen treasure to pay the fine. The value must be equal or higher than what you owe, and you will not be given any change. If you have no goods or gold left, your debt is forgiven this time. But it is possible that you were telling the truth. If that is the case, the sheriff must pay the penalty of every legal card. The gold and legal goods then get added to your play area. If the sheriff doesn't inspect the bag, and lets you pass, all legal goods are placed in their sections of your player board, and any player at any time can see what you have. The stolen treasures, however, are placed face down in its section of your player board. Each player can know how many there are, but not which type. But what of the villagers? When you get 3 of a kind of a legal good, take those 3 cards and place them in the discard pile. Then take a token of the villager related to that legal good. And note that villager tokens cannot be used for bribes or to pay debt. The villager is considered safe. And finally, we are at phase 5, the end of the round. The player who was sheriff now takes the sheriff standee and passes it to the player on their left. And that player will then be the sheriff. Then each player draws back up to 6 cards to begin the next round. The player who was sheriff this round, of course, already having 6 cards. Once everyone has been sheriff 2 times, or 3 times for a 3-player game, the game is over. All players must then discard their remaining cards. They are worth no points. Next, reveal your stolen treasure and add up the points. Next, add up the cards from your player board. Add the values of any coins you may have, and the value of your villager tokens. And finally, King Richard's gold and silver bonuses. The player who helped the villagers most and second most are given the gold and silver bonuses. The player with the most rabbits gets 20 points. The player with the second most rabbits gets 10. The player with the most mice gets 15 points. The player with the second most mice gets 10. The player with the most owl tokens gets 10 bonus points, while the player with the second most owl tokens gets 5 bonus points. And in a game of more than 3 players, the player who helped Otto out the most gets 15 points, and the one who helped him out second most gets 10 points. If there is a tie for the gold bonus, add the gold and silver bonuses together, then split the points equally. Also in this case, a silver bonus would not be awarded as well. And if there is a tie for the silver bonus, split the silver points equally amongst the 2 tied players. So the silver bonus for mice is 10 points, so each player gets 5 points. After all of that has been added up, the player with the most points gets the victory. If there is a tie, the players who helped out the most villagers overall is the winner. If there's still a tie, the players share the victory. Thank you for joining me for this How to Play Disney Robin Hood Sheriff of Nottingham game, and we'll see you next time. Bye.